Hello everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, and I'm podcasting from Ma'ale Adumim in Israel. We live within the dimensions of time and space. These dimensions are so basic to our existence that we hardly consider them to exist. It is utterly impossible to imagine anything, life, reality, existence, without time and space. We take them for granted as much as we take our own minds for granted. They simply are, and that's that. It is one of the interesting quirks of human understanding that we cannot ever define time or space. Try it out yourself. Define either one. You will find that you cannot get any better than the actual words themselves. Space is just space, with no other explanation. Time is just time, and good luck pinning down to anything better than that. A famous ancient philosopher once said that he knew exactly what time was until asked to explain it to someone else. Space is equally elusive. We know what it is, but we cannot hope to convey that understanding to anyone else. We just assume that whatever understanding we possess of these concepts are shared by everyone else. With that in mind, it seems obvious to all that there is nothing unique about any given point in time or space. Why should there be? They are simply arbitrary markers of these dimensions, which have no real existence other than in our own minds. While we may put particular value on a particular point in either time or space, such as a birthday or the location of our own home, deep down we recognize that these times or places are really artificial illusions that only exist because we believe they do. Since this realization goes so much against our own innate desires, we tend to dismiss it altogether. It should come as no surprise that religions and cultures place great emphasis on particular times and places. These were the holidays or holy days in which special events in the history of that religion or culture took place. They were also the particular locations of those events occurred. A good deal of religious belief tends to revolve around these times and places. Judaism is no exception to this. Special times and places are the features that keep things going amidst the humdrum of everyday life. Hence, Shabbat and Passover and Yom Kippur, and the synagogue, the Holy Land, and Jerusalem. This week's Parsha is called Devarim. That word happens to mean words in its context in the Parsha. It is the second word in the first Parsha of the fifth book of the Bible, Deuteronomy. The word Deuteronomy itself is a Latin word, which is the translation of the phrase Mishnah Torah, which means something like repeat of the law, which to some degree is what Deuteronomy is. This book recaps many of the events that took place during the Exodus and the wanderings in the wilderness, and then restates or expands many of the laws and rituals that were listed in the other books. The name Mishnah Torah was the original rabbinic name for this book, and the Latin name reflects this. But Jews today know it by the name Devarim, which, although somewhat nondescript, has stood the test of time. This Parsha is the first of three that go into the history of the Israelites from shortly after the Exodus until they stand on the cusp of entering the land. It is just to the east of the Jordan River on the plains of Moab that the entire book takes place. It is essentially a long speech given by Moshe to the entire Israelite population, reminding them of their unique role in destiny and their unique relationship with God. Sometimes in going through this book, it is easy to lose track of the fact that it is really one long speech, as it wanders through historical events and long lists of laws with no evident particular order. The real point of the speech only becomes clear in the final few parshas, when everything is laid out concerning the role and destiny of the Israelites. It happens that the timing of this particular parsha is always set up so that it comes right before the day of mourning, known as Tisha B'Av, which means the 9th of the month of Av, which falls right after this coming Shabbat. Tisha B'Av is the day commemorating the destruction of not one, but two central temples in Israel from the distant biblical past. The first temple, which stood for about 400 years, from the time of the legendary Solomon, about 3,000 years ago, until its destruction by the Babylonians in the year 586 BCE. This destruction is recorded in some detail in some of the later books of the Bible, and was seen as a catastrophe of biblical proportions. The second temple, which stood on the same spot as the first, also lasted about 400 years, though the chronology in this case is a little more difficult to pin down. This is because only the initial stages of its construction were described in the final books of the Bible. Much of its middle history is shrouded in a cloak of mystery. It was rebuilt in a few different stages over the centuries and reached its well-known final form at the time of Herod about 2,050 years ago. Its destruction took place as a consequence of the Roman war in the year 70. The site of both temples, known as the Temple Mount, has remained bereft of a Jewish temple since then. Though there were a few attempts in the early centuries to rebuild the temple on that site, none of them amounted to anything. A Roman temple was built there a few decades after the final destruction, and there is evidence of churches and even a synagogue on the large area, but none of them lasted very long. The Muslim Dome of the Rock, built on what is believed to be the actual place of the core area of the original temples, has stood in one form or another for the past 1,300 years. Tisha B'Av is the day when Jews mourn the loss of their temple. This day has a long history going back deep into biblical times. While there is no solid evidence that the Jews mourned on this day during the period when the Second Temple stood, there is no question that this mourning has taken place year after year for the past almost 2,000 years. This is a considerably long time to be mourning anything, and it shows the intense collective feeling among the Jews for this loss. Even Jews who have no particular desire for the rebuilding of the temple sense this collective loss. It has seeped into the collective conscience of the Jewish people as a day to mourn national tragedy. The day itself has assumed its own identity in Jewish belief, and there is no great desire to eradicate it, despite the great achievements in modern times of rebuilding the nation of Israel and the city of Jerusalem to levels that they haven't seen for 2 millennia. The historical evidence of both temples is largely beyond dispute. The retaining walls of the Second Temple still stand around much of the Temple Mount. Most of these are from the Herodian period, but parts are from earlier times. Small sections of walls of the actual temple have been found on the Temple Mount, but these largely haven't seen the light of day. While evidence of the first temple is much sparser, walls from the period have been found, including one section of the city wall that was just announced this past week. Jewish tradition attaches considerable significance to this particular place. The Temple Mount is traditionally considered to be the holiest spot in the Jewish world, despite all the press surrounding the Western Wall, which was really just a retaining wall for the Temple Mount. Even though all of Israel is called the Holy Land, Jerusalem ranks above the rest in this elusive status. Even though all of Jerusalem is called the Holy City, it is this particular area that ranks above the rest. Even on the Temple Mount itself, there is a hierarchy of holiness, with some areas deemed permissible to enter and others completely off limits. The huge flat rock which is surrounded by the Dome of the Rock is considered the holiest spot of all, for this is where the famous Ark of the Covenant sat during the centuries the first temple stood. Paralleling this, Judaism attaches great significance to various times throughout the year. While some of these commemorate particular events, such as Passover for the Exodus, some are simply seasonal or reoccurring themes through the year, such as Shabbat or the holiday of Sukkot. Others, such as Tisha B'Av, are completely detached from anything to do with the year, month, or week, and occur only because a particular event happened then. In addition to the destruction of the temples, Jewish tradition associates this day with the returning of the spies from their infamous journey into Israel and the negative report they brought back. Taking things one step further, Judaism partially attributes the destruction of the temples to that negative report and to the reaction of the Israelites to it. The famous statement from the Talmud has God telling them that, quote, "You have cried over nothing, so I will establish for you a mourning for generations." Another version of this renders it, "You cried over something foolish. In the future, you shall mourn for something of substance." What comes out of this tradition is that there was nothing unique to this particular day that destined it to be the national Jewish day of mourning. It happened to work out that way by historical circumstances. But the fact that both temples were destroyed around the same time of year forced the association of this specific day with Jewish catastrophe. It has worked its way as such throughout Jewish history. The final decree of the expulsion of the Jews from Spain in 1492 is traditionally believed to have taken place on this very day. We don't know why this day, among all others, was chosen for this tragic purpose. We just know that this is the way things are. Whether or not we choose to assign a certain predestined status to this particular time and place is a matter of personal belief. Perhaps the temples could have been built somewhere else. Perhaps their destruction could have happened at a different time, or not at all. What matters is what did happen. Because things occurred the way they did, Jewish history and tradition has been forever changed. We alone can give times and places significance. This perhaps is something that God has left in our hands. Time and space are neutral realities, dimensions that serve no other purpose than to be arenas for our existence. But when we give them something more than that, when we call one day holy and another tragic, or one place holy and another desolate, we grant them a purposeful reality that goes beyond their otherwise meaningless existence. We give them a life of their own, and in doing so, it enriches our own lives immeasurably. It makes time and space and us matter. Shabbat Shalom.